Does God ban marriages that aren't between men and women? Does God hate people who aren't cisgendered? This is God Search, and I'm Michael Shevack, and this is going to be a little bit of a controversial episode. I'm going to deal just delicately so not to try to offend anyone's sensibilities. And by the way, just reminding you, God Search. What is it? It is your particular search to have your particular experience of good. That's how we're pragmatically treating the word God. No one knows whether God exists. No one has ever met God to the best of anyone's knowledge, but the experience called good, an increased experience of truth and unity and actions that are supportive of life and expansive to include as many people in all life and creation as possible. That is an actual real experience, and you can experience it, and anyone can experience it. In the past couple of podcasts, we've talked about different bodies. It's a very radical approach. I'm moving into a more metaphysical description of God because we need to in this era where science has gotten extremely refined and the metaphysics and the implications of the metaphysics of science are touching religion. They are also opening up ancient cans of worms that hadn't been opened up before. And one of these things are the issues of gender, and one of these things are the issue of non heterosexual unions, all these things that in the past were buried under covenantal religious formulations that were designed to increase the population and detour the germ cells, eggs, and semen into producing children. So this era is a little bit different, as we talked about way back in podcast 8. Ever since the invention of the nuclear bomb, when human beings' minds have gained ascendancy over the inner workings of matter and the inner workings of earthly nature, there has been a plethora of different variations of human behaviors that's been kind of released from the shell and we've had to be dealing with this since the 1960s. Now, in the past couple of podcasts, we talked about having multiple bodies. We talked about in a union between a woman and a man, there is two genitals. One is your throat and one is your crotch. One is for conception or conceptual abilities that we think and express and we act to build our dreams and build the forms of creativity that we all like and we all use, such as the computer I'm using. And the other is for conception or increased reproduction. We also talked about the very curious linkages in kind of sacred octaves between the scale do re mi fa sol la ti do and this and the colors of the spectrum in light, which is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, with the planetary motions. And we showed how this is very, very much a part of the experience that comes to you if this is where your God search takes you. If it doesn't, you won't have that experience. But so these are two subtle levels of the human being. One is a kind of solar system body, and the other is a kind of light body that's personal, that is yours. And then the other is a material body, which is kind of it's kind of like the breading on a chicken cutlet. When you bread the chicken cutlet and then you fry it. That's the material body. It's what happens when the materia of the planet, the elements form and create what will eventually be left behind as a corpse. Now, it is obvious as you begin to gain the more subtle metaphysics that are involved in the design of life or how life operates, it's obvious that one cannot maintain in the same kind of enthusiasm the ancient covenantal model that simply seemed to be men and women. Okay. You can't maintain that. You can't deny that. It's obviously a critically important ideal. Indeed, it is a law that is built into the design of life that it takes certain kinds of cells to create life. And it requires parenting and all sorts of responsibilities, more so in the past because we didn't have technology to allow us to be flexible biologically. We didn't have washing machines. We didn't have, now we have robots, so we couldn't be as biologically flexible as we are now. But now we have much greater flexibility because the technology has gotten enormous. And covenant, or our living relationship in alignment between ourselves and each other and our society and all life and creation, is taking on different configurations. And so you're seeing different variations of people, different sexual variations, different gender variations. And this is part of the normal reconstitution of life as we grow and as we evolve. People don't want to admit it. Now, of course, this is a very threatening thing because if you are having non-reproductive forms of marriage, between two women or two men. And let's leave out the artificial reproduction for a second, which is where you borrow it from other people. But if you have non-reproductive sexuality and it goes to an extreme, it can undermine the propagation of human species. That was the foundation of the biblical revelation, and that was internalized in our scriptures, both Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and became part of the world culture. So that can be very threatening. That is why in this era, when we're having decreases in sperm counts and decreases in fertility, and we're having threats of nature to hurt whole populations through, flooding and global warming, this is why that old ancient biblical scourge is resurfacing, and you're getting a lot of very traditional, now called right wing, religious rebound to balance the naturalism. But the naturalism, meaning the all the different variations of nature that are part of it, that part of who we are, is a very important and critical part also, because in the previous biblical, more biblically based era, in terms of lines, well, the whole purpose was to encase and enclose and manage and direct nature towards reproduction, towards the ascendancy of the conscious creative mind, so we could gain power and ascendancy over nature. That era is changing because we have so much knowledge and so much specifications in different ways and so many creative avenues and so many options that the old model is not holding. It is clear and obvious when you're dealing with a kind of solar body, which with consistencies with the planets, which makes astrology make sense, and sound and music, and you're dealing with a subtle body of thought, very much akin to our dreams, and you're dealing with a more material aspect to the physical body, which creates the corpse. It is obvious that even if the couple is not male and female, even if they are the same sex, even if they are not reproductive, even if it previously would seem that they were a scourge of biblically based religions, that this cannot be held to be true. Relationships can be good and helpful and generate and contributive to our world, our culture, and nature, even if they are not reproductive. The old covenant formulation was based exclusively on reproduction. In the way we are thinking of covenant in this era, we have to say, well, there are generate relationships, relationships that produce healthy, flourishing vibrancy of life force, even if they're not reproductive. And in fact, that reproductive vibrancy is enhanced by these non-reproductive relationships that enter into the entire economy of biological variation and reproduction and enhance the fertility of the species, even if they do not directly impact on the increase in reproduction. Biologists, and I'm not going to go into too many studies, have noticed that these different mating rituals that aren't necessarily reproductive are there to enhance social cohesion. They're there to enhance fertility by detouring uh, certain people away from reproduction and elevating the reproductive force of the entire species. This is a well-known biological fact. It is unfortunate that the previous biblical era does not cohere with the biological era. In non-reproductive marriages, meaning their bodies don't reproduce on their own, no differently than if you happen to be a normal, cis heterosexual couple and you can't, for one reason, reproduce. That does not mean there is not great life enhancement, great generate or life force galvanizing, life force, um, you know, potentiating force in these relationships that are not part of the covenantal design in order to create a more enhanced relationship between human beings and our world. We don't have the knowledge completely on the mechanics of it all any more than we have the complete knowledge on how quantum mechanics works. It's new, it's so variant in different variations, in its different variations that we can't even wrap our head around fully. But it is obvious that when you become aware through your God experience, as you will, of different levels of bodies, or if you prefer a different language, different aspects of the same body, that's all a very complex discussion, that it becomes obvious that one cannot simply have an either or in terms of marriage and no marriage. It can't be simply a reproductive criterion. It can't simply follow the religious model that seems to be scripturally anchored. Now, other cultures that are classically called pagan, Greek or pagan Rome, pre-Christian, meaning pre-Jewish in their concept, these kind of activities were very, very well respected and part of the fabric of society. That is why these societies became considered naturalist, okay? Meaning they weren't designed to increase a covenantal relationship where the individual was in relationship with the creator of nature. Instead, they were designed to increase the relationship of the individual within nature. It's a slight difference in subtlety between seeking the conscious force beyond natural earth and natural creation, or seeking to be in alignment to earthly nature itself. This is a very, very delicate issue. It's an issue of scale, and it touches back on many, many philosophers, Greek philosophers who maintained the eternity of the cosmos, as opposed to many other Jewish, Christian, and Muslim philosophers who were thinking more in terms of the creator of the eternity of the world as something which stands outside it. Nonetheless, in this era where the natural forces are regaining power because we have annihilated them, and there is an inspiration that is taking place in human beings and in human society to recover some of these things that were formerly labeled pagan, we have to begin to understand that these variations in marriage have their correct place, although our culture has not evolved yet to fully know what is the correct place and what is the correct place morally. The morality is an essential thing. Let me give you an example. There will be many people who choose to reproduce and they need to reproduce with artificial help, or they can't do it. So they will, for instance, take medicine to increase the number of eggs they produce, or they will inject semen artificially rather than use, sexual intercourse. And these things are considered to be perfectly normal. In this day and age, we're also seeing people who are borrowing germ cells from other people in order to have babies. This is common in straight communities, it's common in gay communities. It's just basically becoming very common. The moral issues on that for society in general do touch on very similar issues that are dividing us in terms of abortion. Does that baby who is conceived with a certain germ cell have a right to know its parent that is involved in its body? And do we have a right to actually borrow the reproductive cells of another person because we don't have them and we need them, because we have that desire without considering the effect on the child itself? Now, I am not a person who lays down laws. I don't believe society should restrict us. I believe in a wise, temperate exploration, and eventually what happens is society finds a correct balance for managing these new moral issues that are the results of technology. But we do need to ask the question morally on whether or not these are sort of artificially adopted children. We're manufacturing artificially adopted children. It's not children just simply due to mayhem or mishap because the parents could not raise the child. We are actually creating and in a way farming children who are adopted. They are, as it teaches in rabbinic law, they are kind of pre-uteral adoption, but it is still an adoption from a legal point of view. The question that emerges is the right of the child. Does the child have a right to know its true parent? And do we have the right to abrogate its true parent and replace it with an adopted parent without considering, shall we say, the soul of the child? This is a similar question to abortion. Now, I'm not going to answer that here. I'm ignorant. I don't know fully how to handle this difficulty because I don't lay laws down. And I don't believe that society is even capable or knowledgeable or wise enough to even begin to fathom this issue. So I believe in the freedom that we have in the United States of America to experiment and discover what's working and what's not, and modify it and include different divergent challenges from reds and blue teams and everything, and discuss these things openly in freedom, not bashing each other. Hey, hear it. Said it many times on God Search. Wherever there is a conflict, there is missing knowledge. Do not fight with each other. Just seek the missing knowledge together as fellow God searchers. And as you seek it together, the knowledge on how to deal with things in a way that is beneficial for yourself and another, all others, future generations, all life and creation, with continuous improvement and evolutionary thrust so that it is generate, will take place. In the meantime, it is absolutely egregious and false to deny marital variations to people who are not by definition reproductive, not by definition cisgendered, and we must be tolerant, beyond tolerant. We must go to the next stage. The next stage is to say that all of these variations are part of the design of life. They are all important, that these variations are the human being learning to balance and explore life. If The previous way the covenant was designed was very restrictive for the reasons I spoke about. This next stage needs to be open to diversity with the same kind of enthusiasm. And both extremes, if you go too tight and the rigidity of your classic marriage model, or you go too tight on your openness to every possible desire that anyone could possibly have, the cohesion of human life, the cohesion of us biologically and in terms of our society, which is there to protect those who are too weak to protect themselves. It happens. If you're a parent, you know very quickly that there are some things that exist that are too weak to protect themselves. The, the will crumble. It's the extremism and the antipathy between the extreme divergencies of marriage and the extreme rigidities of marriage that are tearing us apart because both are part of the design of how life works in nature. And now that we have some more in-depth scientific knowledge and we have reached a new stage of critical technological development where we have pierced the veil on matter and we now need to embody a more energized, more energetic form of life force within our covenant, within our society. We are face to face with new variations of relationships, new variations of marriage, and all of these are God blessed. They are beyond political correctness. They are beyond some of the strangeness of cultural forms that make these things popular and faddish and invade the privacy of people's lives in their bedrooms. A lot of what goes on is questionable misuse of media and questionable misuse of sensationalism. But the core issue of variance within the human being and variance of gender and sexual orientations and their legitimate and purposeful addition to human life and all life in creation, viewing them not as a concession, but viewing them as part of the divine fabric of how life works for good. You know, that's our God search, how life works for good. Seeing them as positive is the approach we need to take. It's analogically, you know, it's not a matter of tolerating Black people. It's a matter of seeing that nature has people who are lighter skinned and people who are darker skinned, and that's part of how the whole thing works. So, hey, by the way, go to yourgodsearch.com and please send me a note. Let's talk about these things and let's get a different view out there than is strict religionism or strict New Ageism, something that really holds together that we can recreate the American view of freedom and the American view of Western civilization in a way that we're not getting trapped all the time in our underwear, which we are all the time seeming to get. We have a lot to accomplish. And the most important thing right now is to begin to change how you think. So we have been discussing this whole thing about having multiple bodies so that we can begin to move and open up our eyes to other vistas and begin to see some of the more delicate and more sublime aspects of human spirituality. That's part of your God search. And if you continue your God search, you will discover these things for yourself. You'll describe them your own way. You may bring a completely different viewpoint, but you will open yourself up to these doors because these doors are there for everyone to walk through. This is Michael Shevack for God Search. Hey, uncover God, discover God, and please recover some of the sanity that has been lost in all of these horrible religious debates and these horrible religious wars, including the ones in the Middle East, and be a contributor to a world where everyone knows that their purpose is to wake up and have a God search every single day. Join me again next week. That's Wednesday, about 5:45 Eastern Standard Time. God bless. Have a great day, great week. Bye-bye.